So we're almost done the first month of the Major League Baseball season, and so far, I mean, it's only a month. It's still early. One more week of April left, but there's still some stuff happening with some teams or some players that is really kind of wonky. More so the teams, and when it comes to players, in the end, some players have their ups and downs, and eventually, when it comes to their final numbers, some of them start hot, some of them start slow. In the end, everything always balances out. But when it comes to the teams, if you have a rough start to the season, you're usually doomed for the rest of the year. And that's what we saw last year with the Atlanta Braves, who just struggled with injuries and could never get going. And they just struggled throughout the season. This year, so far, the big story has been these two teams. The New York Mets just ended a 12-game losing streak, and the Philadelphia Phillies also just ended a 10-game losing streak. Both teams are expected to be at the top of the NL East, and so far they're two, not only at the bottom of the NL East, they're two of the teams almost at the bottom of the whole league. To put this into perspective, the Phillies and the Mets, their team records are worse than the Chicago White Sox and Colorado Rockies. The same two teams that over the last 2 years have almost set the records for being the worst, franchise in terms of a losing season in MLB history. So with both of them, it's different issues. And so when it comes to the Mets, it's more glorified because of their spending and Steve Cohen and everything. But the Mets also were missing Juan Soto, and that's obviously a massive piece. But remember, they let go of Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, and some other guys. And they brought in guys like Bo Bichette, Luis Robert, traded for Freddie Peralta. They just haven't been able to get going, and they've just struggled offensively. Marcus Simeon's also older. His bat was already falling off last year before they made the trade, more so for defensive purposes. So he's been a non-factor, but pretty much all these guys haven't really done much. And now Juan Soto's back in the lineup, and they have won a game to break that streak. Can they put together a winning streak to get back in there? It's not that they're that far off. You win, 6, 7 in a row, which is possible, and you're right back in the swing of things. With the Phillies, it seems to be a bigger issue because Dave Dombrowski doubled down on this core, which is getting older, to run it back. And yes, they have some youth that they've introduced with Justin Crawford and Andrew Painter in there, but they didn't switch up anything. They kept the same guys, the top of the lineup with Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber. Alec Baum has his own off-field issues going on. That's probably definitely affecting his on-field performance because he's been brutal. Bryson Stott was a hot name in terms of providing some sort of value, and he hasn't done much. So I think the Phillies are the bigger problem. Aaron Nola is not the same pitcher he used to be. He'll once in a while get some strikeouts, but he gets lit up quite a bit now. Jesus Lazard is good. Since Zach Wheeler, came back, was actually in the lineup starting for the Phillies against the Braves to end that losing streak. He didn't get the win, but he was the starter for the game that they won. But he's not. You can't rely on Wheeler. He's 35. That he's going to be the same stud pitcher that he's been for several years. So the Phillies, I think, to be honest, more so than the Mets, are probably going to be in bigger trouble. But at the same time, they have enough talent, even though they're older guys. If you look at Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, and the Dodgers guys with Muncy and Will Smith, not like a lot of those guys are young guys either, right? So the Phillies should be able to somewhat turn it around, but between both of these teams, I do think the Phillies have more issues. I think the Mets are just more glorified because it's the New York Mets and they're made fun of and all that, but they should be able to turn it around. And they're not the only team struggling. The Houston Astros, the Boston Red Sox, and the Toronto Blue Jays have also not been good. The Kansas City Royals are terrible as well. And I think some of those teams will turn it around. Houston has a lot of injuries. The Blue Jays have a whack load of injuries. They'll start getting more healthier, and when they start getting healthier, I think the wins will start coming. And then you got some teams that are overperforming. Eventually, they'll come back down. Teams like the Minnesota Twins have been having a hot streak. The A's. My bad. No Oakland, just the Athletics. They started off getting swept by the Blue Jays to open the year, and since then they've turned it around. And remember, they have a lot of young offensive guys that can pop and have some big numbers too. So they can also eventually. The NL West is a little bit. The AL West is a little bit weak right now. All the teams are pretty even. No one's running away because the Mariners have also been pretty horrible. But eventually, a lot of these players will turn it around. There's some that it's a little bit concerning. Like, for example, Bobby Witt Jr. hasn't hit a home run yet, which is really wild to think about. It's not like he's a 40, 50 home run guy, but the fact is, he's considered to be one of the best hitters in the game. And the fact that he struggled, and I mean, some other guys are also struggling really bad. Kyle Raleigh has been, well, he's picked it up over the last week and a bit. He was absolutely terrible. And then there's some guys that are just hitting out of their mind. They have great numbers. It was kind of projected a little bit for the Yankees, but Ben Rice has been awesome for them. He's been on fire, hitting for bombs, power, average, a little bit of everything. So I think some guys was expected. And then the other big thing is we've had a lot of injection with rookies. And when it comes to rookies, there was a couple that were really hyped, including one guy that's been hyped as one of the biggest rookies since Mike Trout, and that's shortstop Connor Griffin of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He also signed a massive extension, I believe, an 8-year, 9-year, I think $140 million contract or something, that locks him up until like his age 29 year. He just turned 20, I think, on Friday, and he actually hit his first home run that game. He's only played like 20 games. He's really struggled defensively. He's obviously helped, but awesome. Offensively, he's struggling. Eventually, he'll pick it up and learn, because that's kind of what he's done in his previous history in terms of the minors, right? So every level, if he struggles, he eventually figures it out. So I think he had a couple of big games. He had his first 3-hit game. Then he also has been stealing some bases. So he should come around. And then Detroit Tigers, Kevin McGonigal is actually on fire, because he's one of the top hitters in the American League. I think his average is over 330. He's been now moved to the top of the lineup for the Tigers. Pretty much gets like a hit or two every game, it seems like. Like, very rarely do you see him go like 0 for 4. He's done really well. And we're starting to see that more and more with younger players coming in and making an impact. Cam Schlittler's been doing really good. He's not considered a rookie, but he's having an awesome season for the Yankees. And then also Nolan McLean for the New York Mets has been, probably the only bright spot for them, because he's pitched really well. He probably should have more than one win, but again, because the Mets can't score, he's had no run support. And so we've seen a lot of injuries as well with certain guys, and eventually they'll slowly start coming back into the picture and make the teams better. And then the other big thing is that the ABS system has been a success. It was weird for the first few games because we weren't used to it, but now, like everything else, it's only been like a month and everybody's kind of used to it, and it's helped the game quite a bit. So I can't see anybody being upset, because it's made the right calls in certain aspects. Sure, there's been times that players have probably gone a little bit, trigger happy, I would call it, and just call or challenge something when really they probably shouldn't. But we've also had someone, where you see him get a ball and it gets called a strike, and it's so obvious on TV, yet they don't challenge because for whatever reason, or maybe they forgot. So it has made the game better, and overall, I mean, the product has been good. Right now there's a lot of parity. The Dodgers aren't running away with everything like everybody thought. They are up there, obviously. They're having a winning record, but they're tied with the Padres, who surprisingly have also done really well. And I think so far it's been an interesting year, and we just realized that there's still a lot of season to go. Again, April hasn't even ended. May hasn't started. We're still a long ways off to see how things play out. But we've already had some interesting storylines in the early going, and so based on that, it's gonna be interesting to follow along and see how certain other teams do, how certain players perform, and eventually, as we get close to the trade deadline, in terms of who's a buyer, who's a seller, we'll have a good idea at that point as well. Once again, thank you. If you like my videos, please like, comment, subscribe. And also, if you're a big fan of some of the other sports, I also have channels for the NFL, NHL, NBA, and WWE. So please like, comment, and subscribe there as well. And I'll catch you guys later.